in the Bible, it is said that God tells Noah that there is going to be a all-destroying flood, and he's supposed to escape the flood by building a boat. So nobody believes Noah except for his family, and then he builds a boat, and eventually his family and some animals get on the boat, and they manage to survive the flood. So this is the biblical story. Today, based on data, Noah and several others are telling the same thing, that in the near future, we expect coastal cities to flood because of sea level rise. And this is going to have serious impacts on many people. Um, we have been hearing about the biblical Noah's story for a couple of thousand years now, and even today movies are being made on this story. But despite having heard the story so many times, we still tend to be apathetic towards the threat that is being told to us about. Uh, so this is the basis for the study of psychology of why uh, people tend to perceive some threats as serious and some others not so serious. So this is Leonardo Dicaprio, who was elected as the United Nations Messenger of Climate Change and Peace in 2014. And at his acceptance speech, he said the following: "As an actor, I pretend for a living. I play fictitious characters, often solving fictitious problems. I believe mankind has looked at climate change in that same way." Recently, he made this movie called "Don't Look Up." It's a classic satire on the plight of climate scientists. Uh, it's about uh, it's about scientists who are trying to warn the public about an impending disaster, and how people don't believe him, and so on. It's a very nice movie. You should try and watch it when you can. So this brings me to the topic: why are people not serious enough about climate change? So to start with, let us have a look at our brain. So human brain is made up of two parts: the left brain, which is usually responsible for all the logical, math, engineering stuff, and the right brain, where most of the creativity happens. It is responsible for all the art, all the fictitious, all the fictions, and is also fundamental for our uh, for our emotions. So these are the two parts of human brain. If you look at the history of evolution of human beings, uh, it goes back to about 4 million years ago. So what we see today is a 4 million year long evolution, and out of this 4 million years, civilization began about only 5,000-6,000 years ago, according to Western sciences. Uh, and organized religion came into existence about a couple of thousand years ago. And all the advances that we see around us, everything from architecture, electricity, industrialization, everything has happened, and all of the sciences have been developed in the last few hundred years. So in this very long history of evolution, uh, the left brain, the logical brain, has found very good use only in the last few hundred years. So this is another figure showing the same thing with temperatures taken from Antarctica ice core. So the last 10,000 years have been very stable climate, and that some people believe that it is responsible for all of the advancements that humans have made, and it pretty much agrees with the data we have. So all the sciences developed in a very short span. So when we think of the human brain, the left brain and the right brain, we usually tend to think of it as two equal halves. But actually, it is more like this. The the right brain, the emotional brain, is more like an elephant, and it is pretty strong and has tendency to react on impulses, whereas the left brain, the logical brain, is like the rider. And even though logical, many of the times we tend to take our decisions based on the emotional brain and not the logical brain. So this is how functionally the two brains are divided. And I want to point to this aspect here of the emotional brain. It is stories play a very important role here. So we will come back to this later. So the problem is now that we have a Stone Age brain that is trying to deal with modern issues. So there are going to be some not so good things about it. So one of them is climate change, and we will look at that. So now we know that we have a brain with a very long evolutionary hangover and a very short time. We have had a very short time to improve our logical abilities, to work on the logical aspects. So when we think of threat, what exactly is it that our mind perceives as a threat? So psychologists have come up with this acronym called PAIN. Everything that is personal, things that have an abrupt impact on our immediate environment, things that are immoral or indecent, or things that are immediate. So these are the things that our mind perceives as a threat. And climate change is none of these. So this is one primary reason why it is very difficult for us to perceive climate change. So moving on to the next thing. Based on data, we know that we are almost in the middle of climate change and a global warming is guaranteed. But the chances of a terrorist attack is about 1%. But this is a far more perceivable threat than climate change. And it is because of this that we have spent billions of dollars on security measures everywhere in all the airports. So this highlights how the pain principle tends to affect our biases towards perceiving some threats as real and some as not so real. So we have one factor now, pain. So to understand the next factor, I will play a video. So NetGeo has come up with this amazing series called Brain Games. I really like some of their videos. So here is one of them. So this is in this video, they will be skipping over this rope several times. So I want you all to participate in this game. So this is the green team here. So now everyone has to count every time the green team lands a jump. So as the video plays, I hope it will work. Yeah, so so counting starts now. So yeah, I will ask the same question which they ask: how many jumps did you count? But the answer to this is actually immaterial. Uh, the There is another question which I want to ask. Did you see a chicken on the screen when the video was being played? If you did, then it means that probably you were not counting. Uh, so let me go back to the video and show the chicken. Probably I will have to exit full screen. Yeah. So do you see the chicken there in the background? So it came somewhere in the middle of the video and then it left. So this, this is the the chicken and the counting were both meant to be a distraction. The real question is, what is the color of the wall? And most people tend to miss this. The reason is that there is too much information coming out in this video at once, and our brains are trained to focus on certain things and ignore everything else. The answer to this question is that there is no one color for the wall. It keeps changing throughout the video. It is one color at the beginning and it is another color at the end. But there is a reason why I like this particular video. And the reason is that what the green team was doing is kind of like our lives, our career goals, our family, our friends. Most of us are focused on these things. If we are not, then probably we will notice some weird things in the background, like the chicken. But climate change is like the color of this wall in the background. It's going continuously from blue to slightly darker shades to orange, then to red, and to dark red towards the end. So climate change is happening kind of like in the background here, and most of us tend to miss it out. So then we have now two reasons why our psychologically we tend to ignore climate change. One is because of this principle, pain, and the other that we have a limited frame of focus. And to understand another reason, I would like to take the example of Sherlock Holmes. So this is a crime scene from one of his famous cases study in Scarlet. So the way, if you have read Sherlock Holmes, the books by Arthur Conan Doyle, the way his cases advance is that there is a crime, so there is a victim. Then Sherlock tries to crack how the crime was performed, so the action. Then he tries to figure out the criminal and the intent eventually. So in many of the cases, what happens is Sherlock has already figured out the criminal and how he performed the crime, but he does not declare the criminal until the point where he is very sure about the intent. So intent plays a very powerful role in our lives, and this happens to be one of the things that the elephant mind or the elephant brain has a tendency to latch onto. So intent is a very powerful thing. So now, if we think of the climate crime scene, the victim is someone very far away from you, whom we cannot even see, whom we do not interact with on a daily basis. But because of information decimation these days, we kind of have an idea that people, especially in the island nations, are suffering. The action we know, all the actions that we perform have a contribution towards climate change. And the criminal in this case, each and every one of us is kind of in a way contributing to this. Slightly unsettling, slightly uncomfortable, but yeah, we are all the criminals in this crime. And the most important thing, like I said, intent is the most important thing, and this is where it all begins to fall apart. None of us performs the action with an intent to cause global warming. This is where it gets very difficult and very difficult for us to accept. We drive to work, we drive our kids to school. So none of these things have any intention of causing global warming. It's our daily lives that we are living. In fact, if you go around to a conference, let's say, everything around it is trying to sell you the idea that it is eco-friendly. You board a plane, the plane says it's using eco-friendly fuel. When you get into the airport, that itself feels very amazing. You have nice lights. You have everything sorted out at the airport for you. In fact, if you look at the things they serve on the plane, including, for example, plastic water bottle. On the bottle, it says it's made out of recycled plastic. So everything around us is trying to sell us the idea that we are doing good to the society, towards our environment, and this kind of does not make us accept the intent, or we do not cause we cause climate change is a hard pill to swallow. So we have three things: the pain principle. We have a limited frame of focus that is primarily that is primarily limited to our daily lives, and there is a lot of anxiety about the cause for climate change because we are doing it inadvertently. So this is the backdrop. Now, now let's get ready for a whole new level of complexity that comes when we consider society as a whole. So what we saw, the three principles, these are at an individual level. Now, we are living in an information age today, with a lot of information going around, and we may think that the emotional brain is not is not something that is going to affect our daily lives, but actually that is not true. It all depends on how we how we are told things, the stories that are told to us, that matters a lot. And here is one example that I would like to talk about. This is Dr. David Heimbach, and this is at a Senate meeting where he's giving his testimony. So at this meeting, there was a bill up for ban on flame retardants. So a little bit of background: flame retardants are chemicals. These are toxic chemicals that are used in cushions to ensure that in case of a fire, cushion or foam does not catch fire, and in that way it is helpful. But these are toxic chemicals. So it was being used for quite some time, and there was a motion to ban these flame retardants. So at this meeting, people were presenting their data. People told why they don't want these chemicals to be in their cushion. And David Heimbach comes up. He's a doctor. He's a surgeon. He talks. He tells a story. He tells a story about a baby which is few weeks old. Now the baby is kept in a crib with a pillow which has flame retardants, and the crib catches fire. So when that baby was brought to him, he realizes that the pillow which had the flame retardant was the part of the baby which did not burn, but the rest of the baby was burnt. And this story was so moving that the bill was passed and there was no ban on flame retardants. The thing is, he was paid by the flame retardant companies uh, to tell a story, and this story was entirely made up. And eventually, he was caught and had to give up his license, medical license. But the reason why I'm bringing up this example is that with the help of stories, we can convince people even today to do actions which are not logical. There is another important factor. This is not only an information age, this is the age of misinformation as well. And we are all familiar with this this thing that happened in the early days of the pandemic, a very massive rush for toilet papers. So lockdown happens, everyone is panicking, and instead of taking food, people are going after toilet paper. That is quite unsettling because you can see the emotional brain in action here very much, even with all the advances that we have made. So I would like to then highlight now that we live in a society which is influenced by climate and which has a very strong connection with the ecology and is driven by socioeconomic factors. So it's a very complex web of with many different factors affecting each other. So in this complex web, some strings, when perturbed, tend to produce similar kind of results. And here is my perspective on this. This is again from another story in the Bible. This is from the book of Exodus. It's about Moses who leads Israelites out of their slavery from the Egyptians into the promised land. So in this story, they talk about Egypt being inflicted with 10 plagues. First, when Moses tells the emperor of Egypt to release the slaves, the Israelites, he does not concede, and it seems God put 10 curses on Egypt, and these are the 10 curses. So first, their water turns red, then their cities are flooded with frogs, then they have problems with lice, flies, then the livestock dies, they get boils, then weather goes crazy, then they have locusts, again weather goes crazy, and then most of the firstborns in their families die. So after this, so this is the sequence of events. I have put it here, the 10 curses. After this, the emperor of Egypt concedes and lets the Israelites lets the Israelites leave Egypt. So that leads to Exodus. Exodus literally means mass movement of people, and but eventually the emperor has a change of heart. He wants to then kill all the Israelites, and he takes his entire army to kill the Israelites, and but his army is washed out. So this is the story in gist. If you consider these events, the boils and the death of the firstborns, and link it to some of the events of the last 2 years, and think of this as the first wave, this as the second wave. In the second wave, Delta affected most of the younger generations. So if you think of this as the second wave, we also had issues with locusts recently, and we saw that Exodus also happened during pandemic, and we have a war going on right now. So the point I'm trying to make is that in this complex societal structure that we have, certain perturbations lead to some similar results, and possibly the Bible is talking about an ancient pandemic here with some masala and some mythological factors added to it. So this is my take, my perspective on this. So now coming back to the topic, we have a brain that wants to ignore climate change. We have a complex society that determines our behavior, and we have some very smart people like the magician, the conman, and also salesmen who understand very well the emotional aspects of our brain, and they cater to it in order to manipulate our behavior. They use it to their advantage, and this has very nicely been captured in this book called Merchants of Doubt, and there's a documentary by the same name. This is one of my favorite documentaries on climate change and global warming. Most of this documentary focuses on the tobacco industry. With this example, they have laid a foundation for how a few group of scientists and industrialists are able to manipulate the popular opinion about certain factors, in this case tobacco and climate change. So the scientific process is a very long, arduous cycle. This is a scientific process. Scientific thinking can start at any of these points. I prefer that it start from observation, but it can start from a conclusion by a previous study also. But the point is that it's an infinite loop where we go on searching and researching and making infinitesimal improvements in our understanding about the universe. So this process is difficult for a common man to understand, and many of the industrialists and oil companies cater to the emotional brain of the common people, and they make them question the scientific process, and in this way they hijack this process. And since we are trained as researchers and not communicators, it is difficult to sway the popular opinion eventually. So in this documentary, they talk about a playbook, a template developed by the tobacco industries, and how that is being used for climate change, uh, climate change by climate deniers now. For example, the step one is to manufacture doubt in the scientific process, which I just discussed. Step two is to question the science itself. So, for example, when this is from the recent IPCC report, when we talk about global warming, we not only suggest how much we expect the globe to warm, but also we specify a uncertainty level. And this uncertainty is slightly hard for people to comprehend, but this is stretched way out of proportion, so as to confuse common people. Um, Step three is to create controversy. So this was around the time of a release of IPCC AR4, when an email controversy happened. It is also popularly known as ClimateGate. Then find friendly scientists who would speak in favor of climate denial. So in this case, this is one of the foremost climate deniers. He's the late Professor Fred Singer. He is also the founder of NIPCC, Non-Governmental International Panel on Climate Change. So this is a mirror of IPCC. For every IPCC report, there is a NIPCC report, and it seems it uses the same data, has the same figures, but draws different conclusions. So here is an example. This was a report by NOAA, and this is the mirrored report. It has the same layout, as you can see here, same layout, similar figures, but their conclusions are very different. So to a layman, who, if he happens to pick up the mirrored report, then it would be disastrous. So then attack the messenger. This is the step 5. This is Professor Michael Eman. He is the director of School of Earth Sciences at Pennsylvania State University. He is the one who got this famous curve, which we call the hockey stick curve. So after he published this, he was subject to massive public ridicule and threats. So here is one such example, man-made global warming. So then shift the blame. This is another tactic. I think around the time of IPCC AR5, the blame was shifted from CO2 to black carbon aerosol, and recently the narrative has been that coal is bad and we should move away from coal, but there is no statement about oil emissions coming from oil, and this led to an impasse in the recent Glasgow summit. So these are the techniques that are used time and again. And so to summarize, we have a brain that already wants to ignore climate change. Our complex socio-economic fabric makes it further complicated, and many tactics by deniers further confuse the people. So the end result is that we tend to procrastinate a very serious threat such as climate change. So what are the solutions? When scientists talk about their research, they talk usually data, stats, graphs, how certain they are about something, how uncertain they are about something, how much certainty there is about the uncertainty, and how uncertain they are about some uncertainty. So this is what the entire scientific community debates and mulls over. But this sounds very difficult to grasp for a common man. So we need much better outreach. So here are some really good examples that I have found very good. So this is skeptical science, which literally busts each of the climate myth and at different levels of complexity. So they have a beginner level, intermediate level, and the highest level of explanations for each one of these myths regarding climate science or climate change. So this is another thing called Climate Information Outreach Network. This was founded by George Marshall. He is one of the pioneers in psychology of climate change, and so such efforts are required much more. One very good success story is that of the ozone hole. The depletion of ozone, particularly over Antarctica, was brought to light somewhere in the 1970s, and the media propaganda was that of ozone hole. So there is this layer of ozone in the upper atmosphere which protects us from the UV rays, and a hole in this layer would cause skin cancer. So this is a narrative that people can relate to, that they can immediately perceive the threat, and we can already see that within a few decades, the ozone hole is recovering quite well. So this is one of the biggest success stories, and very strongly highlights the importance of good narratives. So then we need to, the next thing is to learn from the experts. So the way we communicate about how to mitigate global warming is by saying one of these following points: don't eat meat, love plants, love animals, use public transport, don't throw plastic in the ocean, it will go around and come back to you like it's law of karma, and then give up your comforts. They have high carbon footprint, live less comfortable lives. So this kind of already sounds religion. It already sounds like we are preaching something. So if we are preaching something, why not learn from the experts? So going back to this figure, organized religion started a few thousand years ago, and it has been around for quite some time. And it is amazing how these people have been able to make people believe in a very abstract concept like God. And the missionaries have been preaching their religion for thousands of years. So they have thousands of years of experience in making people believe in something very abstract. They know how to deal with human psychology. I'm not talking about forced conversion, which involves violence, but there are other ways in which non-violent ways in which conversions have happened. Climate change also sounds very abstract to a layman. I think there is something to learn from them about how to preach climate science. So this is George Marshall, and his book, Don't Even Think About It, Why Our Brains Are Wired to Ignore Climate Change. So many of the things I had presented today has been taken from this book. I encourage you all to read these books and the documentaries that I mentioned. So coming to the part 2 of the talk, Monsoon this year. So I found this website where they document all the extreme events that have happened recently. So this is for 2022, but this is for informing humanitarians worldwide. So this kind of focuses mainly on the second and third world countries. So at the beginning of the year, we had a major eruption, the Tonga eruption in the Pacific. It sent out ripples in the atmosphere. I'm sure all of you must have seen this. This was so much in the news, I thought that it would have a major impact on global warming, on the temperatures this year. But it seems the sulfur dioxide released by this volcano was not enough. So for example, Pinatubo was released 50 times more SO2, sulfur dioxide, into stratosphere than Tonga did. So its impact on global temperature is going to be minuscule. So we had a massive heat wave this year, and so I would have expected monsoon to be stronger if you believe in the land sea thermal contrast theory. So this figure is showing temperature anomaly on a particular day, but if this was true, then probably and if land sea contrast theory were true, then we would have expected an early onset, a faster onset, and possibly a above normal June, but that does not seem to be happening. So I would like to quickly summarize a few monsoon theories. So the land sea thermal contrast has been discredited because after onset of monsoon, the land sea thermal contrast nearly disappears. It almost becomes negative, which means that land is nearly is colder than the surrounding ocean. So, but monsoon is strongest at such a time. So land sea contrast theory is discredited these days. Also, another reason is that monsoon and monsoon-like features are found to exist on aquaplanet simulations. So the focus has shifted to shifts in ITCZ, theories based on the shifts in ITCZ. So according to this theory, we have this tropical band of precipitation stretching east-west. And if for some reason one of the hemisphere warms more than the other hemisphere, then a shift in ITCZ occurs. This is purely energy-based argument, but this was eventually related to the interhemispheric surface temperature difference. And I think this was a very good thing to do. It is the interhemispheric energy difference is indeed related to the temperature difference, but by specifying it in terms of temperature difference, it became easier for those who believe in land sea thermal contrast to accept and get onto this theory. So again, stories and narratives. Land sea contrast theory is one of the one very simple, easy to perceive theory, but there are reasons why it has been discredited. There are reasons why it has been discredited. Specifying this in terms of interhemispheric temperature difference is one nice way to get people to believe in a slightly different theory, but it has issues. To understand the issues, let's look at the latitudinal extent of ITCZ. So there are three characteristics of ITCZ. It's latitudinal position, the width, and the intensity of precipitation. And shift in ITCZ expresses all of the changes in ITCZ or tropical precipitation in terms of shift only. It doesn't say anything about the intensity or change in the width, when in reality all three could have changed. So there are now theories on the intensity of ITCZ. So this addresses the intensity with a framework called energetics framework. So it's based on conservation of energy and mass. So these are three different theories right now that explain tropical precipitation. Land sea thermal contrast has been discredited, shifts in ITCZ, and we have intensity of monsoon. So this is not a tug of war between the two theories that we have. And shift of ITCZ is based on energy, intensity of monsoon based on energy and mass. And possibly the next theory that comes up will also include momentum, conservation of momentum. So I would like to think of monsoon theory, a complete monsoon theory, as something that has all three elements: shifts, intensity, and momentum budget. So with that, I would like to come to this year's monsoon again. We had floods in Assam, and every year Assam seems to be flooding. If you want to know why and why, this is a very good video that you can look up on YouTube. So onset has been slow, and its progress is also slow so far. This is a forecast of temperature that was made by PIK on the 8th of May for a region in central India. And according to them, continuous rainfall will begin somewhere around 26th of June. Intermittent rainfall can start somewhere by 19th of June. So this, from a temperature forecast, I would assume that this is fairly fairly correct. So sorry, not 19th, 14th of June. So this seems to be fairly correct, somewhere in the, so we are somewhere here now, 14th, 15th. This is the 15th June isochrone, and it seems to be quite a good forecast. So if we assume that this is going to be true for the remaining monsoon, then probably the rest of the country would be covered much later this year than the normal years. So this is the all India averaged rainfall for the last few days. And we have a deficit of about minus 37%. This is another index based on vertical shear, and the shear is anomalously high, but rainfall is not. So again, brings into question debates about whether shear is a good index or not. So forecasts for the coming days, progress is going to be slow. Heavy rain continues to batter Bangladesh and Northeast India. Some heavy rain can be expected along the west coast. This is the cumulative rainfall anomaly for the last for this week, and this is not as bad as what has happened as the observation. So in the coming weeks, we can expect more rainfall in northern India. So yeah, according to the models, progress should be faster, but we will see. PIK had predicted a slower forecast, and this model does not say so. So let's see how it goes. This is the entire seasonal forecast issued on the 3rd of May. And according to it, most of India is going to have above normal rainfall. Yeah. And ENSO is in the La Nina state right now, and it is weakening. It is expected to continue to weaken through this year. And I would like to end by showing this this plot from one of the websites from University of Hamburg. So this is based on ERA and ERA data. It shows the different equatorial waves at different levels. So I will go to the website now, and here it is showing